Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal and you're watching the Mojo Story. The Indian Express has reported that the Modi government is considering a plan to withdraw the army from the interiors of Kashmir in a phased manner and replace it with the CRPF or the Central Reserve Police Force. The report says the plan has been in the making for around 2 years, and the Union Ministries of Defense and Home Affairs, along with the military and Jammu and Kashmir Police, are part of the deliberation. The Express report says that the withdrawal is not just a sign of normalcy in Kashmir Valley, but it's a way to make the normalcy visible, as the Modi government believes the security situation has improved since August 2019 when the J&K's special status was scrapped. The report says that the government claims that violence incidents and killing of security personnel in Jammu and Kashmir have reduced by almost 50% since August 5, 2019, compared with the same period before it. Now, to discuss this, we are joined by an eminent panel. We joined by Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. He joins us. He's a former DG Infantry. Welcome to the show, sir. We're also joined by Ajai Shukla, who's a defense expert and a journalist. Welcome to the show, Ajay. We are also joined by Ifra Jan from the National Conference. Welcome to the show, Ifra. And we'll also be joined by R.S. Pathania, who is a spokesperson of the BJP. If I may start with you, Ajay, I remember 20 years ago, you did a story on similar sort of reports that were coming in at that time about the movement of army from the Kashmir Valley, although it was replaced by the Rashtriya rifles at that time. What's the sense that you make from this report?
This report is, to my mind, incorrect. It appears to be an attempt to create the impression that normalcy has returned to the valley. The simple facts are this: there are 3 layers of deployment in the states of Jammu and Kashmir, the former state of Jammu and Kashmir, I should say. The first level, which is closest to the border, is on the line of control, the LOC deployment, which has been always manned by the army, which continues to be manned by the army, and to my mind will be manned by the army well into the future, because that is the first layer which is in contact with the Pakistan army as well as the infiltration which is carried out by militaries.
Right.
The second layer is called the counter-infiltration grid. Now, this is meant to catch and neutralize terrorists and militants who sneak through the LOC deployment of the army. They are then sort of entrapped and blocked by the counter-infiltration grid. This is also manned by the army and to a certain extent by the Rashtriya Rifles. This is sort of a 3-layer grid. And this is it is also a grid which sees active combat, which is why the army mans it. And then you have the hinterland deployment, which is done by the CRPF. For well over a decade now, maybe more, it has been the CRPF that has manned and looked after law and order in the towns and villages and cities of Jammu and Kashmir. That continues to be the case. So to my mind, there is no change in the deployment. It is an attempt, a political attempt to create the impression of normalcy in the valley, which is not the case, sadly, so far.
So Ajay has clearly explained that there are 3 layers. One is they are right at the line of control. Obviously, they are facing the Pakistani army. The second is the counter-infiltration grid that's well inside the Indian territory. If any of the infiltrators manage to sneak in, they'll be blocked there. And third is, of course, in the interiors of Kashmir, which I believe there are encounters taking place where army plays a role. But clearly, even the road opening party is managed by the CRPF now. It's not the army. So one needs clarity, some sort of an explanation. Although the report says that it is the army is moved from the hinterland, but will it also include the counter infiltration grid, or is it just in the interiors of cities and towns? Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni.
Zaffar, thank you. like what Ajay said, the various tiers that are there in the deployment. Now, first and foremost, we have to really understand these are all reports which are there. Nobody has as
Yeah.
yet confirmed whether they are true or otherwise. And secondly, in any case, nothing. Even if the withdrawal has to be there, it has to be in phases. And the most important thing that we must realize and understand is the Rashtriya rifles were raised primarily to counter insurgency, and so that
Right.
there is no stress and pressure on the army, and therefore this particular force was raised. Now, this force over a period of time has obviously gathered tremendous amount of professionalism, has means and ability to gather intelligence, ensures that the counter infiltration grid in place, and well, if wherever the normalcy has come is primarily because of the efforts of one and all. I would say the Rashtriya Rifle, the CRPF, the state police, everybody has been working in sync, and that is how you find normalcy. Obviously, after the 5th of August 2019, there's been a feeling that yes, the kind of normalcy is there, tourism has picked up, things are looking quite okay, and then why not reduce the number? There are two aspects to it. Firstly, of course, I don't think the Rashtriya rifles can be pulled out overnight. It's not possible. Downsizing, yes, because certain number, maybe the numbers, because every Rashtriya Rifle battalion has got 6 companies, they can bring down to normal 4 companies. So a little downsizing can be done. That's not a major problem because over a period of time, we have gathered adequate deterrence capability wherever one is deployed. So one knows our area of responsibility. We know exactly what's happening over there. So the number of troops per battalion can be reduced. That is downsizing, right sizing, whichever way we want to look at it, it can be done. But to completely pull out may be a little difficult because what happens is the paramilitary forces have their own ethos of functioning. The Rashtriya Rifles have their own ethos of functioning, and everybody work in their own respective. As long as the synergy exists, is perfectly fine. Rightly so. If we were to see the overall, why not have the line of control entirely manned by the army? We have the counter infiltration grid thereafter, and the internal, the hinterland, what is being spoken about, like in Srinagar, we don't have the army over there. And generally, the normal man over there, he gets confused. For him, anybody and everybody in uniform is an army man. He doesn't
All
distinguish
right.
between CRPF or police because all of them sometimes they're the same kind of combat dress, some different, maybe
Right.
only a khaki can be
Right.
distinguished from the other person. So,
Right.
but to say that there's a pulling out, definitely there is a need to lessen. But then Rashtriya rifles are also used for rare area securities. We have a
Right.
long lines of communication for deployment, even to go to the LOC.
Right.
So they have
Right.
various multifarious uses. But I think downsizing, yes, may. I think if the
Yeah.
government decides, it can be worked on, but not pulling out. It seems a little difficult to do at this point of time, and rightly so. They've said it in a phased manner. So that is
Right.
how I look at it.
R.S. Pathania, Ajay Shukla, explained it. So did General Saab that it may not be possible to pull out army, and the argument that's being made is to give a sense of normalcy in Kashmir. That's why these reports are coming out.
Zafar, General Saab is right to some extent that instantly it won't be able to pull out the entire army out of Kashmir, but one specific stand which we have clung to very, very tenaciously on all national media as well as on pulpits and podiums. The same stand was echoed by the government on the floor of the parliament also in the last parliament session. And same was the stand of Director General of Police while he addressed a press conference on the eve of close of the year 2022. So the stand is very clear, very uncontroverted that there is a considerable decline. I never say diminish, zero in, or or we could say disappearing, but there is a considerable decline in the militancy. Once we judge the militancy by the numbers and by the parameters which are employed for judging the militancy, we just go for the number of civilian killings. We just go to see what are the total number of terror strikes. We just go to see what are the total collateral damage, what are the total number of militants neutralized. So, in all these factors, the government of India has achieved very very liquidated successes. The morale of the security forces is on an all-time high. The state
Right.
investigating agency, the terror control organizations, they have achieved considerable successes. While that's why we have seen a record number of tourist influx, 16.2 million tourists in the year 2022. This is a record. Smooth on
Pathania sir,
Nawala convention and all that. Yes,
Pathania sir, there are various aspects to it. One, of
yes,
course,
that's it.
that unrest, stone pelting does not happen anymore. But there are
That's it.
encounters taking
Absolutely.
place, and army does not is not at all engaged in curbing stone pelting and stopping unrest. It's always been the job of the police and the CRPF. Here we are talking
That's
about
it.
army. Ifrajan,
Yes, sir.
you know, parties in Jammu and Kashmir have been saying that if there is normalcy, why is army there? Now, if the government is giving an impression or there are reports coming out that the army is being pulled out, doesn't it indicate that there is normalcy? So there's a sense of confidence that we will thin out the army.
Uh, Zafar Saab, first thing which I understood both from the reports as well as from this discussion is that there is no pulling out of the army. There are only reports coming from sources we don't know where they're saying that we might do this or this is in consideration. If you heard the BJP spokesperson before me, he very clearly did not say whether the reports are true, whether he, as a part of the BJP government, stands by that, or these are just rumors going on. So he has clearly distanced himself from it. So we really don't know what exactly is going on. But when you talk about normalcy, it seems to be some sort of Schrodinger's normalcy, This normalcy exists when the PR drum beating starts, when we have to say, this is the number of tourists that have gone in, this is what we've achieved after the abrogation of 370, this is how we have beaten Pakistan, this is what we have done. But suddenly, Zafar Saab, this normalcy seems to, so it doesn't exist. It stops existing when we say, if everything is hunky-dory, why isn't something as basic as an assembly election being conducted? Forget everything else. We have never seen suspension of assembly elections except in the worst of the times in 1990s. So why aren't assembly elections being conducted? If you remember, Zafar Saab, I was here on your show a couple of weeks back where we were discussing the reconstitution of village defense committees. If everything is hunky-dory and if everything is normal, why are village defense committees being reconstituted in areas that fall within Jammu province? Jammu, that so far has, at least until the abrogation of 370, was mostly considered terror-free by almost all panelists sitting here. So if we have normalcy, why constitute VDCs? Why not announce something as basic as an assembly election? And if we don't have normalcy, then please say we haven't achieved what we promised the nation we would.
Okay, Ajay, uh, you know, this militancy has been happening here for so many years now, and different security agencies are dealing with it. Do you think that there is a sense of confidence that Jammu and Kashmir Police and the CRPF will be able to tackle it, at least in the interiors, in the Kashmir Valley? They have been doing it in Srinagar district. Army is not involved in operations in Srinagar district and in some other parts of the Kashmir Valley. Do you think that level of confidence has reached that it can be handed over to other security agencies and army can just pull out? Maybe army is needed more at the line of actual control or at the line of control.
Zafar, I think that first of all, let me say that Ifrajan raises a number of extremely important points. The first important point is who has corroborated this story from the government's viewpoint? Do we even have an official statement to this effect? Or are we just going overboard and discussing a news report that one newspaper has published and which may or may not be correct and which has never been seriously challenged? Now, I would like to know from the BJP spokesperson here, who we are fortunate to have on the show, that is this correct? Does the government stand by this report? Has the army actually been thinned out of Kashmir? Withdrawn? Forget about it. As General Kulkarni said, there is no question of withdrawing the army whole and soul at this point in time. But has the army even been thinned out? If it has been thinned out, what are the numbers? How many sort of people? And from where? From the line of control have they been thinned out? I think not. From the counter-infiltration grid, highly unlikely. And from the other remaining areas, which is the towns and villages in the hinterland, the army was never deployed there in the first place. So I think that we need to address this question of the veracity of the story, first of all, and to what extent the government stands by it.
Pathania sir, please respond.
Sir, as I was submitting in the earlier leg of my arguments, that it is but natural once the situation the situation is limping down towards normalcy. I won't say striding towards, slowly, we have been able to instill the confidence of the people and give a sense of security to the people at large. So this is but natural. So now this is a report, this is not an official statement of the government. I do accept and I do acquiesce it. But once the situation is on a considerable improvement, the situation is showing considerable improvements. So why cannot we, there should be plans to ultimately thin to buy bits and bits. Army should go out once the situation improves. But the point remains.
No,
The basic
but
constituted.
Pathania sir, the point that Ajay makes is that army is not deployed in any case. Where is army deployed? It is the Rashtriya Rifles. They assist the forces whenever there are encounters that take place. Rest of the job is being done by the Jammu and Kashmir Police, and even if it was when there was this unrest happening, when there was stone pelting taking place, it was the other security agencies were dealing with it.
Zafar, we have CRPF in particular areas guarding the particular sensitive areas of Kashmir. We have
Yeah.
CSF also guarding the certain particular installations of Kashmir. We have border security force on certain sensitive installations in and around the LOC. So the overall, we could say that once the situation has improved and once the situation improves to a certain level, the government, it is but natural. It but natural that army should be phased out. That's not the case. We don't either we accept or we reject. This is the might have been a news report, and this news report also says the government may. It doesn't say the government has thinned out the army from the valley of Kashmir. So we should ultimately, this is what the matter of concern is, that for the first time we are having a government which has a will to take the bull by the horns. They have not allowed the politics of blackmail to flourish in Kashmir. They have not allowed to give a soft hand to the terrorists and their masters sitting across the across the LOC. They have not
Okay.
they have not given kid glove treatments to certain media houses with due respect. We have great respect for the freedom of speech and expression and towards the media working in very extreme conditions as well. But there were few media houses which were doing the hawala transactions and all that. Few few business tycoons whose activities were not above board. The government has
No,
initiated an all-out
but
campaign against
okay,
militancy very
let
soon.
me ask
We will.
Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. The point that's being made by the BJP representative is that when the things normalize, situation improves, that the process will automatically happen, the thinning out of the army. But although the army is not deployed, but even if it's deployed, according to the BJP spokesperson, it will be thinned out. The fact is that army is deployed at the line of control and BSF is deployed at the international border. There is 200-kilometer long international border. BSF is not deployed anywhere. Army is deployed on 700 kilometers of the line of control. Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, if situation has improved, the government has not announced elections. We see acts of militancy and terrorism not in Kashmir Valley but in Jammu. We saw recently sort of a massacre of members of a particular community in Rajouri. Then there was an attack in Jammu. How do the things connect here?
Zaffar, let's put it this way. Let's first and foremost, presume that this input is right. Let's presume that this input is right, and then we discuss, and then we'll presume that this input is probably just, not right. First, presuming that this input is right, yes, to a large extent, to what every one of you all seem to agree, there have been incidents in Jammu which have occurred. So, therefore, we have to be a little careful. Vigilance is the order of the day. But
Yeah.
the presence is very important. What happens is, as I said, it's very difficult for the common man there to understand. For him, everybody is an army man. Once he's dressed up in uniform in a combat, everybody thinks he's a man from the army, and therefore it is there. The Rashtriya Rifles per se were milked from the army to begin with. Of course, when they were initially raised, that was not the concept that was to be undertaken, but subsequently, for whatever the reason it may be, their milking is done from the armed forces, and therefore the Rashtriya Rifles came up. Once the Rashtriya Rifles have come up, they have brought in a sense of normalcy in this union territory now of Jammu and Kashmir, and definitely things have improved. That there is no denying the fact. What matters most is the people who are responsible for internal security. That's what the central paramilitary forces are, the central armed police forces are. They are responsible for the internal security. They must take on. Now, as regards the LOC is concerned, obviously that is not going to be handed over to anybody. It has got to be the responsibility of the army, and will continue to be the responsibility of the army. The anti-infiltration grid, to ensure that the things over there are in normalcy, they will also be manned by the Rashtriya Rifles, because subsequently the Rashtriya Rifles are not just doing that, they're also providing you rare area security. They're doing a whole lot of other things. They can also replace the armed forces on the LOC. So they have other duties also which they can take on easily, because they're built from the armed forces. So that's not a major problem. The third thing which is very important is, since the CRPF and the normal police, now like they say, the CRPF itself has a strength of over 60,000, 45,000 of them they say are in the valley itself. The police itself has about 80 plus thousand people over there, so they're able to. Plus, technology has come up in a large manner. So we have technology by which we are able to monitor so many things without the need of so many people. Plus, the eyes and ears, the intelligence setup has increased. The human intelligence is coming in. So there is a scope, and therefore the right sizing. As I said, if there's a desire to do the right sizing, yes, as I said initially, the Rashtriya Rifles have a number of companies that could be reduced to a little lesser number, and therefore the right sizing could be done. And that right sizing can obviously mean a lot of people would have gone elsewhere, though not in the valley, maybe along the LOC, strengthen the LOC or strengthen the anti-infiltration bit. But to say, because anything and everything would be done in phases. It is not like it has been done earlier also. As I told you, as I was mentioning initially, well, I commanded there from 95 onwards and went on till about 99 this thing. So I know exactly where it is. That time also the army got pulled out, the Rashtriya Rifle got pulled out, problems deteriorated. But now, as I see, things have definitely improved. Nobody can deny that the things have not improved. Definitely improvement is there, and that improvement we must sort of make use of. And that improvement can only be by ensuring that the reduction in forces is there, more tasks and more responsibilities are given to the central armed police force, especially the CRPF, the local police over there, all of that to be done. Like what village defense committee, suddenly obviously you found incidents that happened in Rajouri, incidents that can happen anywhere else in Doda or wherever it is. The village defense committees are there. They were there earlier also. Now again they'll be strengthened to ensure. See, we cannot lose our guard. Our guard has to be up and about. We cannot at all at any point of time everything. Only thing what we really need to do at this point is ensure that we are guarded, that presence, the numbers are not so many of them, and that is how I look at Zaffar.
If Rajan, before I come to your question, for the understanding of the viewers, the Rashtriya Rifles has 4 branches: Delta Force, Romeo Force, it has the Victor Force, and it has the Kilo Force. So these are the 4 branches of Rashtriya Rifle that operate in Jammu and Kashmir. But if Rajan, the point here is that National Conference has been saying in the past that please remove Armed Force Special Powers Act, at least from few districts of the Kashmir Valley and some parts of Jammu. It also applies in Jammu region. Don't you look at it, if the reports are true, it as a positive development? I take your point that on one hand, they're arming villagers and as village defense committees, but on the other hand, the reports about thinning of the army and giving the responsibility to police and other forces.
You see, if the reports are true, that there is, even when you look at the reports, there are no reports that say that this will happen. The report says that this is in the final phase of talks, which means it's getting talked about by important people, let's say, in the administration. So it's not even concluded yet. So they haven't come to a conclusion. Now, if we assume that the report is true, and if we also make a second assumption, a big assumption, that the army will agree and the BJP government will agree, surely this is something we would welcome. But obviously there is a long haul until then, as we've constantly seen there is no assurance on whether the report is even true in the first place. Now, coming to this question that, let us for a second assume that this is true. Even if we assume this is true, there is a tendency of respected speakers on the panel to constantly link normalcy, post 2019 normalcy, with the army reduction. If we actually look at history of Jammu and Kashmir, a very quick look at history of Jammu and Kashmir, such troop withdrawals have actually been a very, more or less, what we say, normal whenever situation is improved, even when Article 370 was very much intact. In 2004, for example, it was Dr. Manmohan Singh's government that actually pulled down a substantial number of troops from hinterlands in Jammu and Kashmir because the situation had improved. In 2011, when it was a national conference government it held, it was the Home Secretary of India, J&K Police, who also said that we were planning. There was a proper report where he spoke to the press, and he said that they actually demanded a reduction of 25% of troop deployment in Jammu and Kashmir, and they were planning to withdraw 25% troops from Jammu and Kashmir. So we have seen such things happen in the past. We have seen troop deployment in the past. We have seen substantial taking away of the troops from Kashmir Valley in the past, as happened in 2011. But as I'm repeatedly saying, what we have never seen is a government that claims everything is normal, but at the same time suspends assembly election for such a long time and doesn't allow such a huge population of people to vote and to determine their own government and to choose their own
Right.
government and to say whether they actually believe and stand with the present government or not.
RS Pathania, isn't there a contradiction? On one hand, arming the villagers, creating village defense committees, which were there but has sort of become defunct because there was no militancy in Rajouri Poonch area. But now they are again being trained. I toured Rajouri just recently and I saw them, being trained with those obsolete weapons. They're being trained. No clarity about elections. When are elections going to take place? Those are not the signs of normalcy. How is it linking it with the abrogation of Article 370 and saying that normalcy has returned? So army is being pulled out according to this report. But other signs of normalcy don't indicate that. Then there should be elections. Then why are village defense committees being, revived?
Zafar, let me first of all deal with village defense committees. It was during the earlier Bharatiya Janata Party rule, and incidentally coinciding with the National Conference rule too. You should also take the credit for it, madam. It was during your reign and rule also. That is supplementary and very, very effective. A very, very effective alternative defense mechanism was put in place and really worked. It really delivered. It really succeeded and really gave a sense of security to the people living on various important. I know what the madam wants to say. It was strengthened in your time. You continued, though, when we entered the assembly. I was pained to say that people from NC and PDP crying, disband the VDCs, disband the VDs. My God, I I hope and I positively hope that this was not incited or incensed from certain international quarters sitting across the border also. I'm making a very hard statement. Why? Why to disband the VDC? So my what I was trying to submit that VDC was an alternative
Pathania
mechanism.
Sahab, the
Sir, sir,
VDCs
sir,
were
sir.
there. VDCs were there, but they were sort of defunct. They are now being revived. That's
That's it,
what one sees.
sir.
Yeah.
Sir, my in the new set of circumstances, there is an increased pressure on the conventional the roots and the conventional practices of militancy. A new brand of militancy, that is civilian killings, then drone droppings, and then targeted killings have emerged. The agencies sitting across the border have resulted to with a view to creating confusion in Jammu and Kashmir. So in these set of circumstances, VDC is the ultimate weapon because if you see the Dhagari attack, a VDC
Right.
member who ultimately repulsed with his outmoded,
Yeah. He shot.
outdated,
He,
out-serviced weapon, and ultimately
yeah.
things were trying to be put on the back
Yeah.
burner. So VDC is one part. So far assembly elections are concerned, we have been a very clear and categorical stand that the call for assembly elections has to be taken by the Election Commission of India. And I'm hopeful
Right.
very soon Jammu and Kashmir will see assembly elections. But why don't Nation Conference and why other London political party talk about the district development council polls? Why don't you talk of the municipality polls?
Ifrajan, please quickly respond,
in the
and then
seventh
I'll go.
decade.
Yeah.
In the
Let
seventh
her
decade, we have
respond.
seen
Let her respond quickly. Then I'll go to
You see,
Ajay, and
just
before we wrap up.
very quick points. Number one, you often see the respected BJP people say, why isn't National Conference bothered about the panchayat polls? And Zaffar Saab, at the same time, if you were to ask them, sir, have you participated in panchayat polls? Are you a sarpanch yourself? None of them have participated in sarpanch polls. They themselves are waiting for the assembly election so that they will become MLAs. खुद सरपंच नहीं बनेंगे, लेकिन आपको सरपंच कहेंगे. Second small point, they say VDCs were reconstituted in your time. Yes, sir, we agree. They were constituted in 1997. If you're saying that the situation in Jammu and Kashmir right at this point is exactly the same what it was in 1996, 1997, then I have nothing to say. Then everything that you've been saying in the parliament is a lie. And you're saying, why were the VDCs disbanded? Again, you give a conspiracy theory across the border. The VDCs were disbanded because during our time, there were hardly any terror attacks in Jammu region.
Ifra, I have to go to Ajay. They were not disbanded. My sense is that they had gone defunct. There was no attention paid to them, and now they are being revived. Ajay, there is also an element of messaging in all of this. This report comes out. What happens? Nobody knows whether army will be thinned out or what happens. But purely from the point of view of messaging at this point in time, what the sense that you get? Assembly elections have not been announced. There is no stone pelting happening. There's no unrest, but at the same time, encounters with militants are taking place off and on. What's the in conclusion? What's the sense that you make out of this?
Zaffar, I would look at it this way. If normalcy is returning to the valley, and the fact is that it is not, if normalcy is returning to the valley, we would go in a phased manner to ease the deployment of the military and other security elements. And perhaps the first step that you would see being taken towards that measure is the loosening of Armed Forces Special Powers Act in certain districts. And if that goes well, then gradually in a phased manner across the whole of Kashmir. You would also see a sort of a larger role for the Jammu and Kashmir Police. You would see this the CRPF deployment being extended to other areas, and you would see the sort of Rashtriya rifles taking over some of the roles of the army, and then you could talk about withdrawing the army. But and not to forget the political dimension of it, the assembly polls and so on would gradually come back into play, just as Ifrajan is saying. Only then would you then start thinking about something as radical and difficult to reverse as the withdrawal of the army from Jammu and Kashmir. So I would say that it's difficult to just take into account one newspaper's report, uncorroborated, unsupported by any government sort of spokesperson. I think that for now, we should just treat this with a healthy dose of skepticism and wait to see what happens.
Let's wait and watch and see what happens. It's a process. Even if it happens, it will take a lot of time. It won't happen so suddenly. That's all we have time on the show. Thanks to all our panelists for joining us, and thanks for watching.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.